Hello, this is Mary Burrs, and today, September the 25th, I had the pleasure of interviewing Ms. Kate Eyler as part of the Nashville Bar Association Oral History Project. And Kate, we're so glad that you have agreed to participate in the program. You have many wonderful things to tell, and we want to make sure that it's all preserved. And so with that, let's start by asking you your full name.
Kathleen Ann Eyler.
And Kate, where were you born?
In Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio.
And when? What is your birthday?
August 19, 1943.
Did you grow up in Columbus?
No, I grew up several places.
Right.
By the time, let's see, I guess we landed here when I was in the first grade.
All right.
And from that forward.
So you went to school in Nashville?
Yes, I did.
And I think you told me that you went to Julia Green Elementary School.
Absolutely.
And then high school was
Hillsborough.
Hillsborough High School.
Yeah.
Did you have siblings?
Yes, I have a sister, Karen. She went to, they had rezoned the schools, and she and my brother, my brother. Wait a minute, let me think about who this is we're talking about.
Okay, your
My sister.
Your siblings, yes.
Yes, my sister went, and my brother went to Woodmont. You call it, is it Woodmont? That nearby school?
Oh, Belmont.
No,
Oh, okay.
it's another neighborhood school.
Oh, all right. But you went to Julia.
No, Woodmont, no. Never mind.
It's all right. But you went to Julia Green, and
I
then you
did.
went on to Hillsborough.
Mhm.
And then, where did you go to college?
I went to the University of New Mexico.
Wow, that's a distance away.
I'll say.
What a selection. Why did you choose the University of New Mexico for college?
Well, I originally decided to be an archaeologist, and because it had a good archaeology school, supposedly, and I got there, and I was not impressed at all by the professors, and so I ended up majoring in Spanish and minoring in Portuguese and in South American history.
Wow, what an interesting selection.
Oh, it's great. Very good professors.
And being at the University of New Mexico, you were, of course, in a very different region of the country.
Yes.
Were you able to engage or to interact with some of the people?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Tell us about that.
Well, of course, I was in a big crowd like me, coming from all over the place, but for some reasons I can't even remember, I began to know people who were from New Mexico, and so I spent a fair amount of time, excuse me, I've spent a fair amount of time going up and down the road to Taos.
Yes.
I was below Albuquerque. There was an Indian reservation, and called Isleta, and I ended up with a friend in Isleta, so that was one place that I spent a lot of time. And then I had a friend at what was called San Juan, it's now called Okewinge, which is near Espanola, and I spent a lot of time there. I can't tell you how many dishes I washed. And then I also spent time in Taos because my other friend was from the Taos Pueblo, the reservation. And so I had a wide experience.
You were saying that you washed many dishes.
Yes.
Were you there for some of the social occasions?
Absolutely.
Tell us about that.
Well, one of my favorites to talk about is my friend Ida. Her grandma lived at what was then called San Juan, which is now called by its original name, Okewinge. And whenever you had a big celebration, now in this particular instance, it was a particular type of what they call a dance. Mm-hmm. Very serious, and everybody would come from all around. All the friends of the family
Yes.
would come. That meant that about 200 people went through the house during the dances going on to eat. That was one of the things that happened. You were supposed to feed everybody.
Mm.
Okay, so.
Hospitality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I found myself to be most useful in the kitchen because I could wash dishes like nobody business. And they were appalled that I would stand there and wash dishes for so long, but I thought it was great because all around you were these people who were talking about things going on. You didn't know, but I picked up lots of information and just had a nice time.
The kitchen's almost the heart
Yeah.
of any place where there's
Right.
a celebration, isn't it?
Absolutely.
What kinds of foods did they have?
Mostly soups and stews, lots of what we call hominy, they call fasole.
Yeah.
And pozole is, would be seasoned with what's called chili in New Mexico, which is different from our chili.
Is it hot?
It's meat. It depends.
I see.
It depends on who makes it.
Right.
But it's from chilies that are grown in New Mexico, dried and then powdered or grated, and so it's a different tasting chili.
Right.
But lots of people came. I'm completely serious when I say that the whole front room, which was very large, was filled with people, and over a day's time, there was at least 200 people to feed.
Were they speaking in a native language, or were they speaking English?
Some of them were speaking English because they didn't speak each other's languages.
Oh.
Because these people came from various other reservations,
Yeah.
some of which had mutually intelligible languages, and some of which didn't.
Okay.
And so English was the lingua
Yeah.
franca. So we had all sorts of noise going on.
And you, this was your experience while you were going to college?
Yes, absolutely. And I just fell right into it. This was one of my roommates' grandma's house, and I felt very at home
Yeah.
in the kitchen washing dishes.
Yes.
What my father had always said to me, wherever you go, be helpful. Well, I've done that my entire life.
Yes.
And so
And we'll come back to that also.
so at one point, matter of fact, my friend's Ida's Grandma Beta, said, "Oh, my dear, you've washed enough dishes." I said, "No, ma'am, I'm gonna stay right here. This is just fine." Well, of course, I was hearing all the talk all around me, and her house was partially electric, but like, for instance, the stove was a wood stove, and there was lots of cooking going on with the wood stove. There was no such thing as a oven and not the kind of
Really?
oven we know.
Yeah.
All the bread had already been cooked in an outdoor oven before this all happened. And they fed people all day long.
Wow.
People from the village, but also from many other villages, including coming from Navajo land, which was
Yeah.
pretty much a fur
Yeah.
piece.
Wow.
And so you were right in the middle of what was happening.
Wow, what a wonderful experience.
Oh, I loved
Did
it.
you have any idea when you went off to college that you were going to have that kind of life and experience?
Not at all. The only thing I knew was my father always told me, wherever you are, be helpful.
That's a common denominator
It is.
way of looking at everything, isn't it?
It is, and
Yeah.
I did it everywhere I went in New Mexico.
Wow.
And I heard lots of conversations as a result,
Yeah,
whether I needed to know about things or not.
Yeah.
I met lots of people.
yeah,
I knew I was being helpful,
yes.
so it was good.
Wow, and it was just a life-changing experience.
It was, and it's right in the middle of it, Grandma Abeda, my friend's grandma, would
Yes.
say, "No, dear, you have to stop now. You have to go outside and go listen to the singing and see the dancing, then you can come back." So I'd go outside. It was a very serious ceremonial dance group, and I would go outside for quite a while, and then I'd come back and just start washing dishes again.
So you were really part of the life
Oh, yeah.
of that community
Yeah.
while you were there.
Absolutely.
And they were welcoming of you
Mhm.
and brought you in, and you did the job that needed to be done the most
Yeah,
with
right.
all those people, wash the dishes.
And Grandma Abeda was always concerned about me. "Now, my dear, you've washed enough dishes, you can step aside." I said, "No, ma'am, I'm fine here. You just let me wash these dishes and I'll be fine."
Oh, what a neat experience
Oh, it
that
was
was.
marvelous.
How did you top that? You went.
I did that actually in 3 different reservations
Oh.
in different places. This house was partially run by electricity.
Yeah.
I went to another one in Taos. My roommate was from Taos, Pueblo, and they had no running water, no electricity, no indoor plumbing of any kind. And so I just adjusted. I had always done this with my father going fishing.
Yes.
I always adjusted to whatever the circumstances were. So if it was time to wrap up apples so you could keep them for winter, that's what I did. If you needed to wash dishes, you put the pan on the table in the kitchen and
Yes.
started washing dishes.
Wow. Wow.
So
I imagine that a lot of that experience kept you in good stead during the rest of your life. That ability to
Absolutely.
adjust
Yeah.
and to take a temperature of what's going
Yeah.
on and then to adjust to that.
Absolutely.
Wow.
It was good advice from my father. He meant be helpful.
Yes.
And I took it that way. But I also found out, serendipitously, I was getting to know a lot of people.
Yeah.
I was hearing lots of information. And also I would sometimes be scooted out of the kitchen. They'd say, go out now. The dances are started. You have to go out there and listen and
Yeah,
watch.
right.
And then I would come back and pick up my washing again.
Oh, what a neat college experience.
Oh.
I don't think I've ever heard of very many college experiences that have been as wonderful.
No.
Rich as that one.
It just was happenstance. You know, I said, my father always said, be helpful.
Yeah.
But he was also, and my mother was always kind to everyone
Yeah.
she met and gracious.
Yeah.
And so with a combination,
So you brought that along with you to college.
yeah,
The helpfulness.
yeah,
Was
exactly.
one of the best things you packed when you left Nashville.
It was one of the best. It stood me in good stead.
We are here because then you led the life of a lawyer for
Mhm.
many, many
I did.
years. And so, having had that experience, you then went off to law school.
I did.
Where did you go to law school?
Vanderbilt, right here in Nashville.
And what did you think about law school?
Well, I thought it was hard work.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, that's all it was to me. It was hard work, plus occasionally very interesting. I got involved in some issues. I was interested in Hispanic and Portuguese, other types of languages and that sort of
Yes,
thing.
of course.
And I got involved in all sorts of things like that.
Yeah.
So I saw the law from different sides, and sometimes the most plebeian, sometimes the most complicated.
Yes.
I saw a little bit of everything.
Wow. And you, of course, had an amazing college experience that,
At the university,
that
right.
helped open your eyes, I would think,
Yeah.
to different ways of thinking and different
Yep.
ways of perceiving and different
Mhm.
values
Mhm.
that people would have in life.
And what you do, though, when you do that, you find that you have, I did, because of the family I grew up in, you have a base which is acceptable to everybody. It's like washing dishes. I mean, you have a way to fit in. You may not know a thing about what's going on, but you can be quiet and listen to everybody. And you can learn a lot. And people want to know about you. Oh, you're from Nashville. Oh, that's the place they have that music, that hillbilly music, isn't it? And I said, well, yeah. Of course, I like the Native American music better,
Right.
but yeah, I had a lot to give to them.
Yeah.
Because I came from a very foreign place as far as they
Right.
were concerned.
Right. And when you finished at Vanderbilt, you went on and you had an amazing clerkship.
I did.
Tell us about that.
Yes, I was most fortunate, and I cannot remember how I did this or how it happened to me. But I clerked for Judge Joe Henry, and he was a character and a half.
He's also a legend.
He's
in
a legend.
Tennessee.
That's right. And he was very devoted to the law.
Mhm.
And he welcomed me because he found out that I actually wanted to be a lawyer. His previous clerk ended up not having a thing to do with law.
Yeah.
He was put out with her.
Yeah.
But I was fine because
Yeah.
I wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And so Judge Henry and I got along very well. He was
Mhm.
curmudgeon, but you know, what did he do? He gave me lots of opinions to write. How hard is that? It was very hard, but it was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And he was thrilled that I wanted to go on to be a lawyer. That was a big plus in his thinking.
In his thinking.
Yeah, and he, matter of fact, told me, well, you need just to go down and talk to Bill Leach down at the Attorney General's office. He's Attorney General, you know. Yes, sir, I'll go down there.
Well, when you went to law school and then when you clerked for Judge Henry, that was at a time when there weren't that many women.
That's right.
And how was that for you? Were you bothered by that or worried about it in any way?
It didn't make a whit of difference.
Really?
Because I knew about the stresses
Mhm.
and some people had to undergo, I think maybe in private practice, especially during that time period. But when you're with a judge like Judge Henry, whose major objective is to get quality work out of you.
Mhm.
There's no difference.
Mhm.
There's no reason not to do that,
Sure.
and every reason to do it. And he and I had really some good times. We really
Yes.
did, and lots of thinking.
Yes.
Lots.
I would think that clerking for Judge Henry would have taught you some skills,
Oh,
thinking
yes.
skills and just legal thinking
Yes,
types of.
exactly. How to view issues.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes he would give me an opinion to write. Some judges didn't do that, but he
really?
did it on a regular basis. And I remember one time he walked into my part of the office and he said, "Are you ever going to finish that opinion?" I said, "Yes, sir, I certainly am." He said, "Okay, come on." I said, "Well, it's a pretty complicated one, but I'll get it to you as soon as I can." So I did that, handed it over to him. A couple days later, he came in and he said, "Well, you're right. That was pretty complicated. No wonder it took you so long to
Yeah,
write that opinion."
Right, yeah,
And so that was the relationship I had
Right.
with Judge Henry.
right, right.
And I loved it.
Yes, and I imagine, well, just from that case, for example, the complexity of legal issues
Oh, yeah.
became.
We got everything.
Yeah, everything, yeah.
Mhm.
What a wonderful way to start out
Oh,
in law.
absolutely.
And as I say, Judge Henry was a legend.
Oh, boy.
And his opinions to this very day are ones that you look to for good
Mhm.
legal writing.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Oh,
that was a wonderful opportunity to.
It was.
clerk for him.
And he just insisted upon the best
Yeah.
that you had to give.
Mhm.
And that wasn't a problem for me.
Wow.
I might have not always agreed with him or vice versa, but I gave him my best, and that's what he wanted.
And at some point, Justice Henry said to you, well, you need to go meet Bill Leach at the Attorney General's
Right.
office. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, the clerk he had before me, Judge Henry had, he found out when she terminated, when her clerkship was over, that she wasn't going to practice law.
Mm.
He was absolutely appalled.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "That's not what you're going to do, are you?" I said, "No, sir, I'm going to be a lawyer." He said, "Okay, well, you need to go down to the Attorney General's office and talk to Bill Leach." That was who the Attorney General was at the time. Well, being recommended by Judge Henry at that
Right.
time, to Bill Leach was a total shoo-in. I mean,
That was a pretty high recommendation. If you
Yes.
needed to get somebody's recommendation,
That
getting
was-
it from
yeah.
Justice Henry was
right.
about as best as anybody could do.
Yeah, yeah. And I earned trust pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Because I had done a lot of serious writing, and that's part of what I had to do. The Attorney General's office turned out a lot of opinion letters, for one thing. And, so many you can't imagine, on the most complex and the most trivial issues. But also, I ended up in court a lot, and I could write a brief. Well, that was also something that was valued.
Those are good skills.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Needed skills at the Attorney General's office.
Absolutely.
So at the Attorney General's office, were there other women?
There were a few.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember how many now. Maybe 3 or 4 of us.
Really? And then more came along later on.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely,
Mhm.
other women came, and as Judge Henry said about his other clerk, she didn't even want to practice law. I said, "Judge Henry, I do." And there's other women were coming along, and Bill Leach was very open
Mhm.
to women lawyers. If you could do the job, that's what he cared about.
Mhm.
And that's pretty much that was a continuation of the way Judge Henry was. If you can do the job, that's what you need to do.
So that was a relatively easy transition for you,
Yes,
wasn't it?
absolutely. And I got all sorts of, you can't imagine the types of cases I got, including things like cemeteries. Cemetery trust companies that didn't keep up their trusts,
Yeah.
what do you call it, contracts properly.
right.
Everything. And I ended up in a real mess of banking in Middle and East Tennessee. That was all the butcher stuff.
The Butcher brothers, is
You
that
bet.
right?
And the son. Actually, one of the cases I had was the father,
Okay.
who had, I can't remember what you call it. We might characterize it as a savings and loan,
Okay.
but it was more like I think it was called an industrial loan and thrift. And it was marketed as if it were a bank. And they paid very high interest rates at a time when other interest rates were not necessarily low, but certainly nothing to touch. The industrial loan and thrift that the Elder Butcher Bank paid on deposits was 14%, which is just totally outlandish. Is it any wonder that it ended up going up?
Sure.
Upside down.
Sure.
And so it meant that a lot of people lost a lot of money. And by this time, I was sitting in the Attorney General's office, and people would call me. And this one woman was just beside herself about losing money to that particular industrial loan thrift. And I tried my best to be patient and calm with her. I finally just had to say to her, ma'am, I understand what has gone wrong, and I think it's a horrible thing. And I said, I need to get off the phone because I can't help you unless I'm in the court taking care of your case. She believed me.
And she believed you.
Yeah.
And that was really the truth, wasn't it?
Yes, it was absolutely the truth.
That you needed, your time in Nashville was somewhat limited.
Yeah.
In terms of,
Right.
But were you traveling a great deal with
Fair
the
amount,
case?
yeah, fair amount. But both to Knoxville, also to, oh gosh, I can't remember where the industrial loan and thrift was operating out of. It was somewhere nearby.
In East Nashville?
No,
Tennessee, rather.
East Tennessee. So all the banks that I was looking at were either between Nashville and Knoxville. There were a couple of, I guess you call them, I'm losing my ability to characterize them. They were court cases, and they involved investments that people had made in what was characterized as a bank, but was not a bank, which means they didn't have federal insurance.
Oh, wow.
They had no insurance. So when they overstretched themselves, they just went pow, belly up, and lots of people who had been getting.
That's catastrophic.
It is. People had been getting. Here's why these types of banking institutions attracted people. They paid it like 14%. Well, of course, people would gravitate toward that. These are people from just the run,
Sure.
just the regular people.
Sure. Sure.
For anywhere from Nashville to Knoxville and environs.
Mhm.
And 14% was a lot of money.
Oh, it still is for as
Yes, well, it's a lot of money now.
Wow.
So no wonder they had the clientele they did.
And they simply lost their savings?
Oh, yeah. Poof.
Wow.
And some of it, the State Attorney General's office was able to collect. Not meaning literally go out and get dollars, but
Sure.
but to go after the people who perpetrated the fraud. That's how we did it.
Yeah. Wow.
And those folks had to do whatever they could to cough up whatever funds they had, and they often didn't have them. So, and there was no insurance behind this. There were in other types of environments, but not in these particular industrial loan and thrifts. So these people were thrown into court basically to be able to claim as much as they could. And I felt very strongly for them.
Of course you would.
Anything I could do.
Right, yeah.
And I think I told you, one lady called me up. Many people called me
Sure.
on the phone. I was in Nashville, and these people were calling me from everywhere, from
Right.
Nashville to way East Tennessee. This one lady was going on and on and on about all the money she was going to lose. And I finally just had to say to her, ma'am, I am really sorry that you are in this in this problem. But until I get off the phone with you, I can't go after these fellows who did you wrong.
Right.
And she understood.
She understood that there was some justice that needed to be done.
Yeah.
But you certainly were good to be listening to her and feeling.
Oh, yeah.
And feeling the suffering that she was.
Right. And I was gathering
experiencing.
information.
Sure, of course you were.
You know, the basic information was going
Right.
to come from the institution itself.
Right.
But I was gathering information about how these
Right.
people perceive these institutions.
Right. You were really doing the job that the Office of the Attorney General was meant to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was great.
Wow.
It was very hard work. I was exhausted. But I'll tell you what, you've got to do things. You've got to reach.
Sure.
You've got to help people. No, I could not say, I'll give you back your 14%.
Yeah.
But I could say, here's what I'll do instead. I'll close this institution down. I will do whatever I can under the law to prevent it ever opening again. And we will do our best to go after those people who took your money.
That's
And
good news,
That
Kate,
was a whole nother.
for somebody to
Yeah,
hear.
and I didn't do that.
Sure.
Other entities, mainly local, local, what am I trying to think?
District attorney?
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't get it out.
Yeah.
Took care of those kind of cases.
Wow.
And in fact, ended up putting a fair number of them in jail, because most of the money was gone.
That's a satisfying
Yes.
part of the job, too.
Close the door and lock it. Absolutely lock the door.
Well, with the pain that they caused a lot of the people of the state of
Oh.
Tennessee, that's what the Attorney General's office
Oh, it was
is
terrible.
tended to do.
Yes, yeah.
Is just that. You had told me that in the midst of all of this, that you were going from court to court.
Yes.
How was that
It was
experience?
It was hectic. In one instance, I had 3 different cases within 2 days. One was in
Involving the
Nashville.
butcher? The
Yes,
butcher
one was in
family?
Nashville, one was in Knoxville, and one was in between. If I had a map, I could tell you what county it was, but I can't remember right now.
It's okay.
But that was all within about 72 hours. 3 different court cases, 3 different venues, and yet we were arguing about the same thing,
Yeah, yeah.
so.
That's only an experience that you could have in the Attorney
I
General's
think
office.
so. I mean, there's lots of ways to pursue crooks.
Yeah,
But in the first instance, a lot of times, we could at least lock them down.
yeah,
And then other people would take over from the private bar
yeah.
to pursue some sort of restitution. If we could do it, we would. And if the private people could do it, they would.
Yeah, that's exhausting, but it sounds like it's very satisfying.
Oh, yes,
When-
absolutely.
Yeah, to do that and to feel that you've achieved something and have helped some people who, at least, they might not get their money, but
No.
at least they'll know that there's been some justice that's been
Well,
done.
the worst was they knew, I had to tell them they were gonna get their money. We had no
Yeah.
way. Now, the feds did go after some of the money,
Mhm.
but I was able to say, these people have done you wrong.
Mhm.
We're gonna try everything we got,
Yes.
all the ammunition we've got, to get them either to pay it back and/or never do business again and/or be jailed. It was all we really had to offer.
Yes.
I mean,
When I moved to Nashville in 1988, the butcher cases
yeah,
were all over the front page
yeah.
of the Tennessee.
And some of them were federal.
Yes,
I didn't do the federal, obviously, but they were everything from
yeah,
the hometown savings and loan to the UAB was one of the ones run by a butcher.
really?
Yeah.
Wow, they were all over, weren't they?
Oh, yes,
Wow,
yes.
what an
Big
experience that
dollars.
was.
Yes.
Wow. In the midst of all of this, you also held a lot of responsible positions, including one with LAW, Lawyers
Yeah.
Association for Women.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, I did.
You were the 3rd president
I was.
of the Lawyers Association
I
for
was.
Women. Who are some of the people that you met?
Oh, goodness. And then
And can I name some names?
You
and
name
see?
some names, because there was just so many.
Sure. Let's start with Judge Martha Craig Daughtry.
Yes, right, of course.
Better known, and she will always be beloved
As Sissy.
Sissy Daughtry.
Yeah, right.
Yes. So did you meet her through LAW, or maybe you knew her
You know,
beforehand
I
at Vanderbilt?
think I probably, no, I didn't meet her at Vanderbilt.
Okay.
I think I probably met her through a combination of knowing Judge Henry and being in the Attorney
Oh.
General's office.
Okay.
And got to know her in that fashion. And, pardon me, then got to know her a lot better through LAW.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, she was one of the founding mothers,
Absolutely.
and you were too,
Well, sort of.
of LAW.
Yeah.
That was an amazing organization
Oh,
at a time when it was so needed.
yes.
When you started with LAW, was it just in the throes of becoming?
Yes, yes. I was there from the first time it was put together, had the first president. And I was trying the other day to think who the first president was.
Was it Claudia Bonnyman?
Maybe it was. That sounds right.
There are some amazing people
Oh, yes.
who founded LAW,
Yes.
who brought that into life,
Mhm.
and who are still amazing people, who are doing wonderful things.
Listen, I just followed in the footsteps of some really fine attorneys who were destined to make that work.
Yes.
You know, whether it was Sissy Daughtry or Claudia Bonnyman, such another
Sure.
good, very example.
Julia Griffin was another
Right.
person who was very much involved.
Yeah.
There are a number of people. Patricia Cottrell
Yeah.
was very much involved in
Mhm.
that, and Patsy,
Right.
of course, was a member of the Attorney General's office.
Right.
We've left out many, many names.
Oh, we have.
Of all the people who were so important in that organization's
If only we
history.
had a list, we could read them
Oh.
from now and for 30 minutes.
I know, and you would have a story for each person, I bet.
Yes, I just about.
Yes, for Judge Daughtry, Sissy Daughtry, did you work with her on any
Cases?
Cases?
No. By the time I came through the process, she was already an appellate judge.
Okay.
So I might have worked on cases that went through her, but no,
Yes.
I didn't. And I was, but like many people, I had a lot of access to her, and other people like her who could say, this is good.
Yes.
You know, this is a good thing we're doing.
Sure.
And you
Sure.
believed them.
Right, right. And it was at a time when women needed to be, to have that.
Promoted.
Yes, right.
Not literally promoted, but shored up.
Right, that's a wonderful word.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Yeah.
it. And the people that you and the other women who were the founding mothers of LAW were certainly the ones who
Yeah.
shored up a number
Yeah.
of women who might not otherwise have
Mhm.
had the wherewithal to keep on going.
And frankly,
with the encouragement.
I actually had no idea that that's what we're doing.
Really,
I mean, because you were very busy.
sure,
I was very busy.
yes.
At the Attorney General's office, I had a caseload like nobody's business. And there was stuff I didn't know anything about. You can't study up about how to get a crook out of an industrial loan and thrift.
Sure.
And so it was constant. And the people I worked with, like whether it was Sissy or whether it was just my own compatriots in the Attorney General's office, were like a pack. And yet they also included all the men. See, Bill Hubbard.
William Hubbard.
Of course, Bill Leach was a fine leader, but Bill Hubbard was a wonderful coach. And I'm sure there are other names I should come up with.
Would Bill Farmer be another
Oh,
one of
yes,
those names?
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Why, how could I forget that? Those are the kind of people we had to shore us up, and who said, okay, go get them. Or, well, have you tried this idea? You know, have you twisted this issue enough? Those
That's
kinds
a
of
wonderful
things.
experience.
Oh, it was the best.
And you, in turn, when you became a deputy of
Yeah.
the Division of Financial Institutions,
Right.
then you also became part of
Yeah.
that mentoring
I did.
that occurred at the Attorney
I
General's
did
office.
it, and I loved cheering them on, just the way I got cheered on. You know,
Yes.
just, it was, you need that kind of thing, like, oh, fabulous what you just did, or, oh, I can't believe the judge did that. Well, we'll have to figure out a way around that. You know, so-
Clearly, it was error, wasn't it?
Yes, heavens knows. And, but we had a lot of those kind of conclaves. And it was both men and women alike. I had, in my division, we had both, and we all just, if it was a financial institution case, we would just all be in a clutch.
Sure. You worked a lot with Katie Edge also, did you?
Yes, because she was with the Department of Financial Institutions,
Mhm.
which is a whole other ball of wax, because she was seeing it from the banking side, and the inner workings
Sure.
of some of these good banks and some of these not so good banks, or good industrial loan thrifts, but some of them weren't. And so sometimes she was our client, basically.
Yes.
She'd say, okay, now listen, here's what's going on. What do we do this time?
Yeah.
Where can you get us into court? do you want to, and I would ask, do you want to be in court? What are we looking for? And we would sort out what kind of issues there were and what kind of relief we were looking for.
Sure.
So it was a great combination.
Yes, of course, Katie is a very fine lawyer.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you had the wonderful experience of working with somebody who was very, very adept in understanding the legal nuances.
Yes, and by golly, she knew banking.
Mm-hmm.
She really
Sure.
knew that world.
Yeah,
So it was a great combination,
yes, yeah,
the best we could ask for.
right. And so you went on to become the deputy of the Financial
Right.
Institutions Division
Mhm.
for the office, and probably you were watching the office grow
Yes.
during that time, and other
Yes.
divisions
Right.
forming in the office. You, even though you were in the Financial Institutions Division,
We called it the financial division.
the Financial Division, you took on what most of us would think would be the case of a lifetime, which was the Geyer.
Oh, gosh, you're right. I was wondering what you could come up with. You know, I do that sometimes, I repress it.
I would think, though, that the Geyer lawsuit would
Oh.
qualify as the case of a lifetime.
Oh, absolutely.
Just a little bit of background information about the Geyer case. And tell me if I'm wrong about it, and you can fill
Okay.
in the blanks.
Okay.
Of course, the state of Tennessee had desegregated the universities and colleges,
Right.
public universities and colleges. The Geyer lawsuit, when that arose, that occurred because the allegation was that the financial support
Right.
for a traditionally white institution was different from that.
Absolutely.
Of
Like having
of
you-
Tennessee State University,
I was
for
going to say,
example.
University of Tennessee in Nashville versus TSU.
Yes.
What kind of funding?
Sure.
What kind of improvements?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
even physical improvements,
Sure.
like dorms and things like that.
Yes.
Very, very different.
And so while the public universities and colleges were desegregated in name,
Mhm.
nevertheless in practice, as the plaintiffs argue, there was still much.
Underfunding is the big.
Right.
There were a lot of things going on, but underfunding was the biggest.
Mhm. Yes.
I mean, once UTN, University of Tennessee, Nashville began, it almost automatically got more money than TSU, which had been there all along.
And faculty members at University of Tennessee in Nashville,
Mhm.
TWI, Traditional
Mhm.
White Institution.
Yeah.
They were given higher salaries,
Yep.
or than the faculty at TSU.
Yeah, there were, as far as TSU, they had the downside of almost everything. Not everything, they had really good students. But what did the students get? Well,
Yeah.
they had some good professors, there's no doubt about that. But did they have the finances to back up
Yeah,
all the projects that were ongoing? No,
Yeah.
they didn't.
yeah. Mhm.
It was just a disaster.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, isn't it? And
Yeah.
that would have been in the 1960s,
Mm.
and maybe early 1970s,
Mhm.
that this was arising. I think
Yeah.
Geyer started around 1966.
Something like that, right,
something
way
like
before
that.
my time.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
And so, by the time you were involved in the Geyer case, there had been a lot of litigation
Mhm.
that had occurred.
Yes.
And a lot of plaintiff interveners had joined
Yes.
the lawsuit.
Mhm.
And there was Judge Gray, federal court judge, and
Before whom I never appeared.
Yes,
because
right.
He'd already gone.
so by the time that you were involved in the case, it would have been Judge
Judge
Wiseman,
Wiseman.
who was the federal court judge,
Yeah.
who was assigned to the case. And so he was the one who was trying to get some resolution
Mhm.
to a pretty difficult,
Right.
emotionally laden
Ooh, I'll say.
lawsuit.
Yeah.
And to make some changes that needed to be made.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm. and to get the parties to some point of saying, of getting to yes, so that some good can come out of this.
Yeah.
Would that be a good way to describe
Yes,
it?
and the difficulty with being the attorney for the state of Tennessee at that time, for me, was we were the bad guys, always. No matter what we did, we were the bad guys.
There was a perception.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, of course we weren't. But was there underfunding? You bet.
Yeah.
And so the case evolved around, as much as anything, funding, because to build new dorms or to institute new programs or anything like that, all of that takes money. And TSU was way underfunded compared to UTN. So it was a long transition.
Yeah.
I haven't kept up with it completely, but excuse me, there were some real improvements made. The difficulty was they were so far behind that some of the state's changes were belittled by the plaintiff's attorneys. Oh, well, you didn't do anything, you know.
Yeah. Do you think this, and this is something I was pondering the other day, and I'd like to have your thought on it. As we mentioned, the Geyer lawsuit started perhaps in the middle 1960s, around that time. It ultimately reached a settlement with your involvement in
Right.
it in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Do you think that the passage of time, that's a long time for a lawsuit to be going on, and of course, people change, and ideas change, and principles of people change. Do you think that the passage of time had something to do with or changing the environment in which that lawsuit was occurring? It's kind of a vague question, but.
Well, no, I understand what you're getting at,
Yeah.
though, because it was very subtle.
Yes.
I mean, the people who had been in it, like the plaintiff's lead.
Maybe George Barrett?
There, thank you.
Yes.
George, how could I ever forget your name?
Yes.
Everything, as far as George was concerned, everything the state did was absolutely, positively wrong, backwards, mean, ugly, terrible. Okay? Now, when you try to parse that out in terms of issues, it's a whole nother story. And if you're trying to guide people to think compatibly, instead of being always at loggerheads, it was very, very difficult.
You had a mediator involved in that.
Yes, we did.
Mr.
Carlos Gonzalez.
Gonzalez, yes.
And he earned his pay more than any of us.
And you came into the Geyer case as the parties were struggling to get to some kind of settlement, resolution. Is that right?
Yes, and they were way, way far
Really?
apart.
And you had to be a pretty quick study, I imagine.
Yes.
With a lot of history that you had
Yes.
to learn and to digest.
I had no idea. I had no idea. And I talk about learning. You're right. Had to learn, and also had to figure out how to deal with the acrimony, which was another layer. And there were times that when the attorneys could hardly speak to one another, because the people who initiated the Geyer lawsuit were so totally entrenched in the idea that there were no good guys at all, that we had to fight tooth and nail to even say, listen, we're listening, quit throwing all this trash at us, please tell us what you're talking about. And so it was a real struggle. And they disliked us as much as we disliked them on any given day.
Yeah, sure.
But
yeah, that was a tough job.
It was a very tough job.
And being in the middle of the mediation, I imagine, was a pretty tough job for everyone involved in it.
Every single person.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mr. Gonzalez had his work cut out for him, didn't he?
Oh, gosh, yes.
With that.
And he was very empathetic to both sides, which is no mean feat.
Yeah.
And I really didn't realize how well he did that until after it was concluded.
Really?
Yeah. He kept the Geyer plaintiff's lawyers close to him. He kept us close to him in the sense of, I'm listening to you, and what about this, and what about that, and it was amazing.
That's a real achievement.
Oh, yeah. I can't imagine how he did it.
Yeah.
I have a great deal of esteem for him.
Yes, and Judge Wiseman, I think, was very encouraging of the parties to keep
He
going.
was. Oh, yes, he was.
Yeah,
It's kind of like, don't come back to me.
right.
You all have got all the stuff you need.
And actually, it was in the Bredesen administration that case
Mhm.
finally reached a resolution,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
it was.
So Governor Bredesen, as I read someplace, the Governor Bredesen, when he announced the settlement
Mhm.
of the Geyer lawsuit, had with him, Governor Sundquist with
Mhm,
him,
mhm.
because of course that was going
That's
on.
the top of the line.
Right,
As
in
far as state.
Sundquist's administration
Yeah.
also. So it was a long standing
Mhm.
lawsuit
Yes.
for the state.
And lots of, I keep using the word acrimony, but there's no better
Yeah.
way to describe
Right,
it.
right.
Even when you wanted to take a hold of somebody on the other side and
Sure.
say, listen, I'm listening to
Right,
you. Would
right.
would you pay attention? I'm listening to
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
And
So I wonder how many students today know what went into the changes that ultimately the UT system and the Board of
Mhm.
Regents system underwent
Yeah.
because of the Geyer lawsuit.
Plus, you have to remember, too, people going to TSU were very protective of their school.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm saying that in a general way. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that they say, oh, well, it's great that we have these falling down dorms. No,
Sure.
but what they were they were so protective of their school, they didn't want it changed.
Sure, their tradition, their
wanted-
history,
Yeah,
right,
right.
right.
They
Everything that
wanted-
they had worked so hard to
Yeah.
achieve at
Yeah.
TSU.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And they needed all the influx of money, and they needed in certain areas, and those could be identified through that long mediation. And I think a lot of changes did occur. I can't tell you this day what this one or this one or this one happened,
Sure,
and there may be still some bad feelings
sure,
way back.
sure, sure.
Um,
But at least, Kate, it got things underway.
Yes, it got them off the base they were on.
Yeah, that's, in terms of everything that you did at the Attorney General's office, what do you consider the proudest thing that you ever did?
Oh, goodness.
Would it be the Geyer lawsuit?
I had so many good things happen in lawsuits that I was in. The Geyer was the largest, the one that absorbed the most of my life
Yeah.
and my time, and that I struggled the most with, and that I had the hardest time dealing with all the feelings of that people had been mistreated, that kind of thing, because
Sure,
I knew that I hadn't done it personally, but how could I help them out?
sure.
And it was very tough. I don't know how to tell you.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Going back to what your father used to say about help any way you can.
Yeah,
Did that play into it for you?
as far as I'm concerned, it did.
Mm-hmm.
Any way you can help, do it.
Yeah,
And so sometimes it was very difficult to work with opposing attorneys who had been in it for so long, who had seen so much grief. It was very hard because they did not believe a word you said. They thought you weren't going to deliver.
mm-hmm.
That was the impression I got.
You probably inherited some very bad feeling
Oh,
that
gosh.
had arisen
Yeah, and
prior to that.
I did.
And so that needed to be worked out, and you needed to show your trustworthiness.
Yeah, people before
that.
me had been trustworthy.
Sure.
But it was mired. It was absolutely
Yeah.
mired
Yeah.
in terrible, terrible situation.
Yeah.
And I wanted so much to help,
Sure,
to do what was right, but I was not about to sacrifice
sure.
other parts of education to get there.
Mhm.
And so I thought I was automatically
Mhm.
on George Barrett's bad list for a long time.
Um, when I worked at the Attorney General's office, of course, the Geyer lawsuit was very much had the attention of the entire office. But you were so linked with the Geyer lawsuit that was Kate's case.
Yeah, right.
So when it
Even though there were troops of us who
well, that's true, but it
went
was
through
still
it.
Kate's case.
Yeah.
And so when it settled, it was celebrated in the office when that was resolved.
Yes, it was just.
Yeah, and it just took some skillful listening and help.
It really did, and sometimes just crying.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth,
Sure.
I can remember being on the phone with with Carlos Gonzalez, who was the mediator. I finally I was in total tears.
Yes.
Because of the allegations that were coming against me.
Yes.
And I just finally said, Carlos, I've got to call you back.
Yes.
I can't stay on the phone.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we went through some of that kind of trauma too.
Yeah.
Where we wanted to say, we're going to do it. You know, I know you're still having trouble with this particular person or this particular approach, but we're going to do it. And so it came hard sometimes.
But it took some optimism, though, didn't it?
It did.
That there would be a way to get to
They were good people. That's right.
Knot the knot there.
Yeah, and at the secondary levels of both entities, like TSU and UT, there were some really good people. Really people totally educationally oriented and who wanted the best.
Sure.
And that got mired down sometimes in the grandstanding, the tirades that were produced by past injustices. I mean, validity. There was validity there, but it's kind of like, oh wait, guys, we're getting past that now.
That's why I wondered whether the passage of time also helped.
I think so.
With that case to get it to some point where people could, could be resolved.
Well, when I got to meet some of the TSU lower echelon deans, and when I say that, what I mean is sometimes you're dealing with only the top tier, but if you would get under that top tier, you would find some really strongly motivated people.
Very committed people.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And part of the case was so entrenched in them being characterized as poor, what they did, was just as much of a problem as having UT stuff to struggle with. Because you kind of like, wait a minute, hold on. You gotta look, wait a minute, look at what these people are saying. They're really solid. And so back and forth. And glory, hallelujah, I don't know how that ever got consummated.
Well,
but it did.
It took some goodwill.
Oh, yeah.
It took goodwill all around, I think.
It did.
To get that resolved.
Yeah.
You, just to change the subject, in the course of all of your practice of law, you also became a traveler as well. You started out going to the University of New Mexico, but that was just the beginning of your wanderings.
Oh, gosh.
Where else in the world did you?
Oh, I've been to lots and lots of places.
Really?
Yeah. And amazing that I came back to Nashville to go to law school.
Really?
But I was a world traveler by the time I graduated UNM, University of New Mexico, and by the time I got into law school. Oh my, I had been in Spain, Portugal, Italy, and France, and England, and I loved to travel. I just absolutely loved to travel. And I also took advantage of some of the opportunities I had as a person traveling in the United States.
Yes.
Of course, one of the things that was so much fun, Jenna Barham had this happen to her a lot.
Jenna Barham was, of course, an assistant attorney general, and she later became a deputy attorney general.
Absolutely.
After you in the financial division.
Yeah. And we, I lost my train of thought for just a minute, but we had accomplishments that could never come to the light of day.
Yeah.
But we knew that we had done them.
Yes.
And so we just have to be comfortable with knowing that we made a part of it.
You did, and you made a part of it for many of us in the Attorney General's office.
Yeah.
Who followed in your footsteps. If you had some advice to give a new lawyer starting out, of course it's a different world in many ways from the world that you started out with when you became a lawyer. What would you suggest? Would it be your father's advice, or what would you suggest that would give somebody the experience of being a lawyer that you have had?
Listen. Listen. And get behind. If you listen, then you want to get behind what you just heard so you can understand it better. And we did a lot of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes through Carlos Gonzalez. And sometimes just our compatriots. And just people that were 2 or 3 tiers down, in all the schools and everything.
Sure.
We just met all sorts of good people.
Yes.
And
they were the ones who taught you the case.
Yeah.
The Eyler case.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I've gotten away from
but that's the advice of listening, I think is very good advice. We lawyers do so much talking.
I know it.
We don't spend enough time listening and really finding out.
And the Eyler case was a good example.
Isn't that
sometimes if people talking too much, even I did it. I mean, everybody in the case did it. Keep your mouth shut for a minute, listen.
And just listen,
Yeah.
Yeah. Kate Eyler, I am so glad that I have had the opportunity, the treat, the honor of interviewing you today. So many experiences that you have had that I look at with some pretty big awe. You have done. And I thank you for sharing these experiences, because they're important for a lot of people to hear.
Yeah.
And a lot of people to realize that they too can become something pretty amazing, just as you have.
Well, and if they'll only listen, if I'll only listen to my own advice, and if they'll listen to my advice, it's listen.
Yeah.
Listen and hear what people are not just saying, but what are they doing?
Yeah.
That's listening to.
Oh, that's excellent advice, and then helping where you can.
Yeah.
Great.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you,
You're
Kate.
most welcome. You're most welcome, my dear.
That ends our interview of Kate Eyler. Thank you.